We're going to kick off straight away because we're slightly behind schedule, but we're pleased that everybody's now here. So we'll jump on. Borden, and I'm the Executive Director of the Institute for War and Peace Reporting. And I have the most pleasant and easiest job of all, which is just to welcome you all very warmly and to thank you all for coming. Real pleasure to be here from the UK, where it's going to be snowy and freezing, but there's other reasons why I've been here many times. It's a really fascinating, really inspiring and intriguing place. I'm very glad to be able to visit again, but especially glad to be able to be based in Tunisia, working on Libya, which we're so pleased and proud of. I'm going to take this a little bit backwards, and I want to thank first the ambassador. We're really grateful for the support from the British government through the CSSF fund, which we work with in a number of areas. We see it as a partnership, and we're very grateful for it, and I'm really pleased we have a few days to work together with that support, and you'll hear from the ambassador in a moment. I want to thank our great IWPR here producing the report and on earlier stages of the work. It's one of our most vigorous and robust teams. They usually get their way, they usually deserve it, but we're really proud of them and they're doing a great job. That leaves me to welcome and really express my admiration for our project participants who've come from Libya to be here with us today, and to thank you for your efforts and for your efforts to be here with us. We have around 40 plus people. You're representing 20 odd groups. You come from across Libya, from the south, from the east, from the west. You come from Tripoli and Benghazi. You come from big cities, and you come from villages. You're working on all kinds of issues. You're working on public engagement. You're working on leadership, youth, human rights, legal support. You're working to support widows. You're working to support children of foreign parents. There's a great diversity in the issues that you're undertaking, and it's a great example of public engagement on things essential for Libya today. The name of this project is Raeda. You are a pioneer, and nothing could be more accurate than that. You're a pioneer because you're identifying and working on issues in Libya that are crucial for Libyan people today. You're a pioneer because in a transitional society, you're engaging as a citizen in public affairs, public issues itself, which is certainly a pioneering role. And of course, you're a pioneer because you were women, or largely women, almost all women, and making new roles for women in the Middle East and more broadly, and that is certainly a pioneering role. We are absolutely delighted to be able to support you. Now, IWPR is also a civil society organization, and the question is, what is a civil society group? And from this report, which you will have seen, and I'm sure we'll be discussing more, it's fascinating to find out that impact by civil society groups is not only on size alone. It has to do with creativity, it has to do with your energy, it has to do with individual brilliance and skill, maybe a bit of luck, and we're really excited to have a couple of days to work with you on your specific issues and what I'd call the nuts and bolts of what makes a CSO work and work well. But you know, if I was to summarize what a civil society group is, I guess I would say it's that group that says, how about now? The issues that you focus on are almost, I suppose, universally important, but what you're trying to do is get the society to address them now, not later. Women's issues, great, but society is not ready yet. Human rights issues, great, but maybe later. Those children, yes, wonderful, but we have bigger issues, bigger fish to fry. And it is the role of civil society to raise a questioning finger, to mobilize support, and to say, no, we think now is a very good time to highlight these issues, and we want to work on it and bring focus to it now. And we're very excited by your efforts, and we think that's critical. I just want to highlight one final point about this. As an organization strongly involved in the media, Seth will know, we always train our journalists to report on all sides to an issue. And in a conflict environment, you'll find that the sides to an issue actually often may have a vested interest in conflict. Of course, they wish to win the conflict, but they may even have a kind of vested interest in the continuation of the conflict. And so we refer to civil society as the third side, the civic side, the fresh voice, which gives the human depiction of conflict issues and a different perspective. And we think it's a perspective of hope. We think it's a perspective of human needs. And we think very, very excitingly, it also reflects very much women's influence, which we think can be vital. So we're absolutely delighted to support you and your work and your efforts, and couldn't be more delighted to be here with you in these important few days. That only leaves me to introduce the Ambassador Frank Baker, who is on his third ambassadorial posting, having come from Kuwait, and then also recently as ambassador to Iraq. He's also served as Deputy Director of the Middle East at the Foreign Office, and he's spent extended time in the U.S., in Washington. I'm sure many perceptions and things we could discuss about the current environment there, but that will be an utter distraction. So we'll leave you to talk about more relevant, perhaps, and certainly more pertinent issues for us here today. Mr. Ambassador, thank you.
Well, thank you very much for that introduction, and good morning to everybody. Salam alaikum. I agree, actually. In many ways, it would be great to have a discussion about what is going on in the United States at the moment, but also it would be interesting to have a discussion about what is going on around the world, because as I stand here this morning in front of you, issues that are happening around the world, and so many of them that impact on all of our lives, but impact especially upon the lives of women. So I think it is very apt that we have this conference here in Tunis over the next 2 days. And from the perspective of the British government, we are very proud to be working closely with the Institute of War and Peace Reporting, because they have extensive knowledge of this type of operation, not only in Libya, but also across the Middle East. They have worked for many years on women's issues and on other civil society issues, all of which are critical as the region goes through the turmoil of the last decade and moves forward to what we hope are going to be better times ahead. And that is especially true, I think, in Libya. And, of course, the United Kingdom has an interest across this region, but it also has a specific interest in and is a very strong supporter of women's rights. I have just come from 3.5 years as the British ambassador in Iraq. When I arrived in Baghdad in the summer of 2014, it was just after Daesh had taken Mosul and Tikrit. Baghdad, Daesh were 20 kilometres away from me in Abu Ghraib, a place, of course, that became infamous in the last decade for other reasons. What we saw, and what my experience of Iraq, and I mention this because it is relevant to Libya today, was that it was that point, it was probably the low point of Iraq, when Daesh were threatening to take over the country's capital, that everybody pulled together. It didn't matter whether you were an Arab or a Kurd, it didn't matter whether you were a Sunni or a Shia, and it didn't matter whether you were male or female. Everybody pulled together. And when I left Baghdad 3.5 years later, at the end of last year, of course, Daesh had been comprehensively routed on the battlefield across Iraq. And yes, Iraq now faces many problems, many challenges, but the key lesson that all Iraqis learned from that was that you can overcome everything if you work together. In Libya today as well. Libya faces huge challenges. The country is divided, we know that. There are differences between the East and the West. There are differences between the North and the South. But Libya can succeed, Libya will succeed, but for Libya to succeed, everybody has to work together. Everybody has to support. A really critical part of that is going to be the role of women and the role that women can play in the future Libya. The situation for women in Libya is hugely challenging, and I think that in many ways it is that challenge that this work is going to be able to identify and help overcome. But there is one particular fact I would like to share with you, and that is that when conflicts have been resolved, it doesn't matter where in the world, the reality is that they have been resolved quicker and more enduringly if women have been part of that resolution. So, in my view, Libya's long-term stability is going to be very closely linked to the extent to which women are able to participate in public life and the extent to which they are going to be able to have their voices heard. So the work that has gone on over the last few months in identifying the issues and looking for ways forward is critical. But what is actually going to be even more critical is the work that is going to follow on from this. It is going to be the workshops, it is going to be the deployment back into Libya, and it is going to be working together collectively to ensure that the voice of women can be heard and that they are an integral part of any resolution or the resolution that allows Libya to move forward. So I think what you should all take away from this, apart from the excellent research that has gone in and the discussions that you're going to have over the next few days and the conclusions that you're going to reach, and I look forward very much to seeing what those conclusions are. But what you should remember is that this is just the start. These are the foundations on which the modern Libya is going to be built. And all of you in this room who are Libyans, remember as you move forward that you have to work together. Your voices must be heard. And we as the international community stand with you. And we as the government of the United Kingdom are determined that the voices of women will not only be heard, but that women will play an integral part in future Libya. Thank you very much.